All right, we are here at the end, chapter 12, our final chapter to finish Pilgrims Progress. Our pilgrims have progressed all the way to the country of Beulah, and that's where we will start off. And just a couple of sections. This is actually a fairly brief chapter. Almost not much to say, because at the end of their journey, it is really about the sort of joyous crossing of the finish, which we believe and trust is not the end, but only the beginning. But it will be the end of this book, at the end of this particular journey. So let's start off with the country of Beulah. Now, just for fun, Beulah is one of those names, and it's a name. And number one, Beulah land, like you just said, it makes me think of like a Baptist hymn that needs to be played on a piano and sung with a lot of gusto. But it also it seems like one of those names that people don't name children anymore. Like, I've not come across a Beulah, and for whatever reason, my mind connects Beulah and Bertha. So if I think about Beulah, I think about a Bertha, who I also envision as rather large, because I've never met a small, skinny Bertha. All the Berthas are big for some reason. I don't know. Big Bertha. So Beulah, which I looked up, to save you the trouble, is from the Hebrew, and it means she who was married. So a bride, basically, Beulah. And so this is a traditional rendering of a sort of a metaphorical reference to heaven, the heavenly country. So why married? Why would that be married? If we're talking about Beulah land as sort of a connotation that should connect us to heaven or the heavenly country, why would married?
The bride of Christ.
The bride of Christ. That's right. And who is the bride of Christ?
The church.
The church is. We are. So this, in essence, is our land. This is the joining of the church with Christ forever. This is that holy mystery, that holy sacrament that Paul says that human marriage is a glimpse of. The unity which is full and complete, a one flesh of Christ and his church. And it's not a bad thought, as we are wrapping this up, to consider a bridegroom and bride, and what that means to us, what we think about, what we assume about a marriage ceremony, about the emotional content, about the affection and the excitement, about what it means that this is a moment that you lead up to with great preparation, with great desire, and this is now the consummation, in a sense, of changing a relationship permanently and fundamentally. To move from girlfriend to fiance to bride to wife, that is a fundamental change. And then we can think about the eager anticipation of, going to the altar and saying your vows and making the I do's and the first kiss and all that sort of stuff, and how exciting and emotional and deep and powerful all those moments are. The way, it's one of my favorite things, mainly because I've got a better vantage point in a wedding ceremony than other people do. But when the music changes at the beginning procession, and sometimes the doors close and then open, and the bride comes down the aisle, well, where does everybody look?
We stand.
We stand and we look at the bride. I look at the groom because I'm usually right next to the groom. And it's one of the sweetest moments to see the expression on the face of the groom in that first moment.
Yeah.
You know, by and large, they have not seen the dress, they've not seen the bride in the gown. You know, but there's always just that moment of you can't really know until you know. You can't really feel it until you see it. You can't really experience it until it happens. And there is always a change in expression. The enormity of the moment, and also the amazement that everything that you've been preparing for is finally here. Weddings are a lot of work. They take a lot of time, and frankly, they're a lot of trouble. And it's not unlike a pilgrimage. What has led to this moment? And I would say that the music has swelled, and the doors have swung open, and our pilgrims are just about ready to come down that aisle. So the I do's have not happened just yet. There's still no ring on the finger, but the consummation of Christ and his church, the bridegroom and the bride, like we are now, the preparation is behind, and the moment is upon us. So here we go. We're beyond the enchanted ground. We are in the country of Beulah. The way goes straight through it. And what is Beulah like? What's the place like?
Oh, the sun is shining. Day and night.
Flowers every day. I love that.
The birds sing. And the turtle dove particularly is
Yes.
Beautiful.
So
a metaphor. Yeah,
yes.
it's a metaphor. Okay.
We are, so much of this book is making a scriptural reference and either stating it explicitly or applying it metaphorically, but very directly as an allegory to something or someone. And this is both kind of connecting to what it says at the bottom of Isaiah 62. The bridegroom rejoices with the bride, so does God rejoice with them. But I also get so many visions of Song of Songs.
Song of Songs, right?
Yeah. Where the lover and the beloved are reunited. They're longing and they're desiring for each other, and they're thinking about it and expressing. We can't wait until that moment and that reunion happens. And this is the time. Come away with me, my love. This is it's a beautifully poignant passage there in Song of Solomon, Song of Songs. And it is occasionally referenced at a romantic or matrimonial sort of moment. I referenced it at my grandmother's funeral because it is a moment of God calling to the faithful soul to lay down the toil of this life and to come. I've been waiting for you.
Yeah. Come
on. And so they're traveling through this green and pleasant land, and it's refreshing. That is, I think, also something worth noting, that through their toils and tribulations, as they approach the threshold there, this is a land of refreshment. Come to me, all that travail and are heavy laden. As right one service says, I will refresh you. So they are closing in on the celestial city. This is not the celestial city, but this is a blessed place. And who do they run into? There's a gardener, and he leads them through the vineyards. This is the king's garden. And what do they find in the vineyard? Grapes. Grapes. And they eat them, and they're good. I think this is, Bunyan would not have said that this was a sacramental moment, but I would. We are refreshed on this side of heaven by receiving the wine. This is how we are renewed and strengthened on a daily basis, whether it's any given Sunday or this is at the end of our lives. But in this mortal world, this refreshment that can come from the hand of God himself, the body and the blood of Christ.
And it made such a difference when we got to drink from the chalice again.
I was deeply bothered by the shutdown and then the restrictions that followed, and trying to think of some way, this is the stuff that when I say it out loud, I get in trouble. The bishop really pushed what he called pre-intinction, where you take the drops of wine and you put it on a wafer and you let it dry. And I was not fond of that idea for a variety of reasons. I am perfectly content with the theology that to receive in one kind is to receive the fullness. Jesus is not split in half, that you're missing something essential. What I would argue, though, is it is a pastoral act. It is something that strengthens us in a mysterious way. Not that we receive Christ more, but we feel different. And that's kind of the difference between a theological truth and a pastoral truth. So, for instance, this is parsing something, but as the priest, it's my job to proclaim absolution, the forgiveness of your sins in a kind of a formal and in a sacramental act. And as people have asked me about that who don't understand it or come from a different tradition, I've said it I am not forgiving your sins. That's not the work of the priest to do that. I am proclaiming God's forgiveness, but I'm proclaiming it with the authority of the church. Why is that important? And why is that different than somebody saying, oh, your sins are forgiven? Read, because Bunyan would say, you don't need a priest as a mediator to offer the forgiveness of Christ. Read your scripture, pray, God forgives you. You can receive that grace on your own. And I would say, yes, but you have the mysterious ailment. You have test results that come back in a very ominous fashion. You have a family history of this dreaded, particularly malignant cancer. When a friend says, no, you don't have cancer, they could be telling the truth. They could be right. But you want somebody in a white lab coat to look at a piece of paper and say, no, you don't have cancer. Right? Don't you feel differently when that happens? Why? What's the difference? Authority.
Authority, yeah.
Yeah, they're both telling you the truth, but it feels different. One doesn't create that truth. Like, well, it was not true when my friend told me, but when the doctor said it, it became, no. It was always true. But we feel differently. That's the theological versus pastoral, right? We feel differently about it. We can appreciate it on a different level. Now, can you say, well you should have been able to do it anyway? Like, okay, maybe, but I am a frail, broken human being, and I need help. And so the authority of the church is what allows us to have that reminder in a way that is maybe perceived or felt in a different or more clear fashion. And so the receiving of the wine, I felt was so important in a pastoral sense. Like I said, happy to trust that receiving just the bread in one kind, we receive Christ in his fullness, but there's something about both. And so as soon as we possibly could, we tried to come up with a way. That's why we started doing those little cups that had both in them, little foil sealed. And we did it, I think at Christmas. And that was way before the diocese said we could do that. But they weren't helping, like, I don't think they were looking for ways to get the wine back as soon as possible, especially because the bishop was very satisfied with his pre-intinction. And again, I didn't see the point, because the issue was not a technical, I have not received the wine. It was pastoral. I have not received the wine. And having a little red drop on your wafer, I don't think addressed the pastoral nature of it, only the technical, which I don't think we needed. Anyway, you know, he and I disagree. Looking to find a way to receive, I thought was important. Whether or not people would express it, whether or not people would say, hey, can we? I kind of felt like, and especially when we got back to it and I was allowed to drink from the chalice, but nobody else could. I'm like, oh, and that's where we started doing the little individual cups. You know, the little shot glass and a hubcap, as I call it. Which I never would have conceived, you know, 5 years ago. Well, when are you going to start using the little individual? Are you crazy? Well, I love them now, because for a long time, that was the best we could do. But I thought that was an enormous difference between that and nothing. So to be refreshed and renewed, to feel that sacrament in a physical, tangible, exterior way, because remember, it was the outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace, I thought made a real difference. And I think that is where even Christian and hopeful are right now. You know, what's the real practical difference between eating a bunch of grapes and not? Is that really going to strengthen and renew them? Like, if you've ever had a handful of grapes, there's actually a practical limit of how many grapes you can make before they make you sick. Right?
Yeah.
Well, again, there's a holy nature to this, and there's an allegory and a metaphor. And I don't think he would argue this, but I will. This is the reception of the sacrament. Gosh, maybe if Father Rob was here, maybe he would say it's the viaticum. This is like that last rites holy sacrament. You know, this is at the conclusion of their mortal lives, where you receive it one last. I don't know. I mean, maybe I won't go that far, but a Roman Catholic certainly would. But anyway, here we are, right at the cusp. And what do they receive but the fruit of the vine? And you know, works for me. All right. Now that's so nice and it's so beautiful and Beulah land and it's so picturesque. And we go to the very next section. And what's the next section?
River, yeah.
The river of death. So this, I wasn't expecting that. You ever drive a rural highway for a long stretch of time, and then you get to a little town, and it's a speed trap town, and it drops from like 55 or 60 to like 30, and then Barney or Andy is in their patrol car waiting, right? Right, tiny little sign, and they're just wet. Like you know, they must fund a lot of the city's budget on giving speeding tickets to people driving through. Well, this kind of felt like going from 55 to 30. Boom. Beulah land and its refreshment to the river of death. So they are preparing to go to the celestial city. They can see elements of it from here. What do they see? The gate.
It's
It's a gate.
awfully bright. It's awfully bright. They can't look at it directly.
They can't even look at it directly because the sun on the gold was so glorious. You couldn't even see it without blinding you. So you have to kind of glance or catch it out of the corner of your eye or sort of squint because it's almost too much to take in.
What's amusing is they have an instrument made specifically so you can look at it
Right.
without blinding yourself.
Anybody remember when the solar eclipse from a few years ago? And you
Yeah.
could get like the polarized glasses so that you could look more directly at it. You know, you stare at the sun and it will burn your retinas. It's too much to take in. And so there's even a little instrument that allows these pilgrims who are not quite ready to take it all in. Remind a little bit of when we did the Great Divorce from C.S. Lewis, and the kind of the ghostly denizens of hell trying to walk toward the glories of heaven, and even the blades of grass cut them like diamonds. They look like blades of grass, but they were so hard and sharp to their ghostly feet because they were real with a capital R, meaning so perfect, so enduring, so true. Not only their ghostly feet, but maybe even human feet were not ready to stand on something that lasting and true and real. They needed to be firmed up first. And that's, I get a little bit of that from this. Even their bodies are not quite ready to take in the enormity of lasting glory. All right, so now we're going to talk to somebody. Who are we going to talk to? We got some angels. We actually have a lot of angels from here on out. Angels all around. These are presumably like the ministering angels rather than just messengers, but ministering to God's people and on behalf of God on both sides now of the river. They say there are two more difficulties to overcome, but they have to be overcome without the assistance of these angels. You must complete the journey by your own faith. So there's an obstacle before them. So there's two things left to do, or two. I guess they're both obstacles. What do they still have to traverse to be within the celestial city itself? There's two things: river and through the gate. Okay,
The
river and gate. But right now, there is a divide between where they are, even in this land of married, to the actual fellowship within the presence of God, and it's this river. Well, isn't there another way to get to the gate other than crossing the river? Is
Yes.
there? Yes. Well, why not take that way? Elijah and Enoch. Okay, so what is this river? This river, again, this is an allegory, and this one is on the nose. What's the
It's
river?
a death. It's death.
The river is death itself. You may not enter into the kingdom of heaven, but first you die. They are going to die in this water. They have to lay down their mortal lives in order to take up immortality. And that's why it is a deep and rushing river. And so he makes this metaphor of something that we all must cross that's scary and overwhelming. and it is our faith that leads us through over to the other side. 2 people have been taken over it. Remember that the chariots of heaven come for Elijah and bring him directly to the throne of God. So Enoch and Elijah never died. Is there anybody else who never died taken to heaven? I don't know. Maybe, but these are the ones we know of. This is the one Scripture testifies to Enoch and Elijah. And so we just say, there you go. Could God do what he chooses and will? But you know, that's one of those, like, I can't tell you what I don't know, but I can tell you what I do know. So in order to get from here to there, they got to die. This is the element of the story that is, I think, intended to kind of put a very visual representation of everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one's in a hurry to arrive. Right? So let's you know, it's a metaphor that I think he wants us to explore and think about for a second. First of all, let's make some guesses. Why a river? I mean, he could have come up with something else, you know, a wall of fire or spikes or a graveyard, or you have to crawl into a tunnel. That would be pretty metaphorical, to crawl under the ground and then come back up again. Why a river?
The cleansing of water.
I think that's probably part of it. This is I think whenever you have water and death, and heaven, you can't help but get some baptismal imagery in there. You know, we pass from death to life into the waters of baptism. They've not, in my knowledge of just searching my memory of what we've read, talked about baptism before at all. Right? I don't think so. So whether Bunyan was being very explicit about baptism, I think that's one of those things you can't escape from this metaphor. What else? Anything else occur to you about this as the illustration of death, this river? Because I think there's some stuff we can play with and think about.
I find water scary. Okay, I'm
Okay.
afraid of water. So
I think there's a very natural, almost reflexive, like I think it's common to humanity. There's a reflexive fear of water. You have to overcome it. You have to get used to it. And even people who are exceptionally experienced and even calm around water, well, that doesn't mean that it can't, number one, kill you. And it doesn't mean that you can't be afraid of it. As a matter of fact, and talking to people who are exceptionally experienced, like by vocation, with the sort of underwater stuff that is way beyond like an average person. So we've got one of the scouting units here is Sea Scouts, Ship 106, and it's a co-ed group, and it's like over teens. You have to be, I think, 14 in order to join, and then go up all the age of 21. It's boys and girls, and so they do like oftentimes aquatic or nautical sort of things. Like they've got a sailboat that they learned how to rehab and sail. But one of the big things that they've done for many years is scuba. So they can get certified, and then they dive. They go off to these cool places and they do these dives. So my girls actually went to they were doing like a free scuba lesson to, you know, introduce potential scouts, and so they did the scuba lesson over at Off the Wall on Shepherd Road, and one of the Sea Scout adult volunteers that I know was there. And then they had a new adult that I didn't know also helping out. Well, it turns out this other adult that I didn't know, she was a like master dive instructor. And so we were just sort of chit-chatting, and she was talking about like she did this professionally. Like this was like deep water oil rig kind of stuff. You know, when you needed something that was exceptionally dangerous, but it had to be done, she was the sort of person who could do it, who was trained, certified, and could teach other people how to do it. Lots of cave diving. Remember in Thailand, the boys who got trapped in a cave several years ago, and they had, you know, the cave divers had to go in and then bring them out, and what an incredible story that was. And I think they just made a movie of it. That takes such incredibly exceptional skill. And anyway, talking to this woman was one of those, if there's anyone who's not afraid of being in water, like somebody like her, or somebody like a Navy SEAL, you know, they have to overcome their fear, but they're like, you always have to be afraid of it. Not in a way that panics you, but as soon as you're not afraid of what the water can do with you, that's when you die.
I say respect the water.
Yeah, but there was respect to it in the sense of, well, the ocean definitely wants to kill you.
Oh, sure.
So therefore, you always have to like be super careful. They're very meticulous, they're very regimented, because they know it's the little slip ups. The moment you don't believe that the ocean is out to get you is when it gets you. Anyway, that's to say the people who are the most trained to overcome their fear of water are still kind of scared of it. So I think there's just something about it. One of the most terrifying sensations is an inability to breathe.
Yeah.
And how do you die in the water other than an inability to breathe?
To breathe.
And if you have ever had the terrifying experience of a near drowning, that is when your body overcomes your decision to not suck in the water. It's like you hold your breath as long as you can, but there comes a point and your body like overrides your choice because your body can feel itself dying, and it just reflexively breathes in. And if you're underwater, you breathe in water, which of course you're not gonna help. But anyway, these are all very, very fundamental, very visceral, very, you know. And there's another thing about this particular river. And as we talk about them getting into the river, it becomes more evident. What's the other thing? And they're kind of warned about this. What are they warned about the water? It is deep enough to drown them.
But there are some shallow places.
There are shallow places, and it's kind of up to what?
Their trust in the king.
Yeah. When your faith falters, that water will feel deeper.
Yeah.
So I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was Cotton Mather. We're going back way in American history and you know, pre-colonial almost. But I believe that there was like a journal entry or something like that at his death. And I think he'd maybe been suffering or something, or been in and out of consciousness for a period of time. And he becomes conscious and lucid right at the end. And he says something like, oh, I can bear this. So there was a fear of the experience of his own death. But when he actually came to it, God gave him some kind of grace to not just be awake, but to be relieved. And I have been around more than my fair share of death, just by vocation. And I have seen experiences that are less pleasant than others to express. And I will say that I've seen these almost inexplicable gifts of grace that some people, it's almost like he gives them some kind of choice at the end. I've seen people hang on and wait until somebody arrives. Like they've been unconscious for days. How do you even know? But, the son arrives from out of state and then they die. I've seen people hang on until people leave.
Yeah.
I have seen people who have not eaten or had anything to drink for days. How can their body linger for so long? And right at the end, after days of not even being conscious, their eyes open and they speak. I've just seen stuff. So everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one's in a hurry to get there. I think is a fair rendering of the practicalities that even though we might agree with Paul to be away from the bodies to be present with the Lord, who of us doesn't have a concern about the moment of death? You talk to people who that is now a more present reality, and you hear stuff about, well, I hope I die in my sleep, or you want the picture of friends and family around. I've been around a bedside where the family was singing, and the person was, it was like flights of angels sing me to thy rest. It was heartbreakingly beautiful. But I hope it doesn't hurt too much. I hope I'm not afraid. I hope I'm not struggling. Right? I have been in hospital rooms where people were struggling to breathe. I had a very dear friend and parishioner in South Florida who had a fatal lung condition that he was given 6 months to live, and he lived for 16 years. But when it got bad, you couldn't tell from the outside, but on the inside, he was drowning. And it was terrifying. He was terrified. One of the most deeply faithful men I've ever met. But just the physical sensation was so awful. To see the river and know that the depths vary, and you can't know until you get in and are too far in to turn around. That sounds kind of scary to me. We all hope how we will respond in the biggest moments of life, but you can't really know until you know, can you? Again, there's C.S. Lewis, that fortitude is not so much one of the virtues as it is each of the virtues at their moment of testing. There is one final test of their faith, and it is death. So they go in, and how does it go? What is the experience in the river?
The things like he was smiling.
Christian
thinks hopeful walks easily.
So, no, I get the impression that hopeful is up to here, but he's okay the whole time. And God bless hopeful, because he is hopeful.
Yes.
The very nature allows hopeful, I think, to cross without the struggle that Christian has. The poor Christian who has been through so much and seen so much and knows so much and all, but at the moment it is a struggle. I think Bunyan intends this as an admonishment. Like, this is Christians failing, and it's by the grace of God that it is not full and complete. And yeah, sure, that's right. But I want to take it also maybe as a difficult encouragement. That if Christian can struggle at the end, it's okay. You know, anyone can struggle. And that struggle is not, it's not to his eternal detriment, but he is brought through. So how does that struggle go? He starts to forget the things that he's seen, the things that he knows, because all he can concentrate on is the drowning.
Like breathing.
You know, it's too deep, it's too strong, it's too overwhelming. And what is how does hopeful try to help?
Telling him to be courageous.
That's right. I feel the bottom and it's firm. And that's the funny thing. If you have ever been in water that you can't see the bottom, it's disconcerting, right? You're treading water and you can't see the bottom, and especially if if you've ever maybe gone out a little too far and you're trying to get back, and like this happened to me a couple of beach weekends ago. There was a sandbar, and I took the kids out, and I think I had Carrie on my back or something, and we were coming back, and there's a trough there. I mean, we're not that far away, but it's over my head all of a sudden. And the swells are starting to get a little bigger, and the waves are coming, and some of the waves are crashing on us. And there was a moment where it was just like, that's not cool. I've got my little daughter on my back, and it's over my head, and I'm about to get another face full of a wave crashing right on me. I know it's not very far, but in that moment, it's a little scary. And so when I first feel my toes touch sand, like I can't really touch from here, but I know it's just about to be okay. So to know that there is a bottom underneath you that you can reach and it's firm, that's kind of a big deal. Because is the bottom inches underneath me, or is it 20 feet underneath me? Because if it's 20 feet underneath me, man, I'm cooked. But if it's right there and I just can't see it, that first brush of the bottom, oh, what a relief. That doesn't mean the struggle is over, but suddenly I feel like I'm actually going to make it. So hopeful is trying to say, no, it's here, it's here, it's here. The bottom is firm and it's right underneath. But, and here's maybe the biggest thing. If you could use a single word to describe Christians' sensation and struggle, what word would you come up with? Because I know mine immediately.
Fear.
Fear, okay. Doubt. Death. Okay, mine takes elements of each of those, but it puts it in an active position. Panic.
Yeah.
So I've told my kids this since they were little. How many problems has panic ever resolved?
None.
Absolutely not. So panic takes the doubt, takes the fear, takes whatever it is, and then loses control. So remember the old definition that courage is not the absence of fear, but it is moving forward despite it. Well, the opposite of courage in that sense might be panic, because it takes the fear, it takes the doubt that still exists, but then it loses control. It becomes overwhelmed by the fear and by the doubt. And that's when you start to sink. Remember what they tell you, like if you were ever trying to save a drowning person, what do? You don't go grab them.
No.
Why?
They'll grab you back.
They'll grab you back, you'll both go down because they're panicking. They need to just relax, which is exactly the opposite of what their natural inclination is. But like trained lifeguards will actually let people go down, and then they'll pull them out, because if you get somebody in the moment of pain, they'll fight you.
Yeah.
You can get hurt, and you can go down with them. So Christians, real trouble at this moment, I think I would describe as panic.
Mhm.
So that loss of control, the overwhelmed nature of the fear and of the doubt is what I think we have to try to avoid. That's kind of the worst element of all this, the panic. And I think we can see that, the moment of death in panic. It can hurt, it can be scary, perhaps even the moments of doubt or fear, but may we not panic, because it's never made anything better. But panic has made an awful lot of things worse.
I think that Christian was very fortunate to have Hopeful as a companion as he crossed that river.
Yeah, so
'Cause he
remember,
kept encouraging him,
and he Hopeful actually keeps Christian's head above water at one point.
Mhm.
So there's the spiritual encouragement, and there's also the practical and physical encouragement. There is so much within this pilgrimage that is not done on his own, but they require each other. When Christian walked with Faithful, having somebody there with him, having the blessing of other people in our lives, that we're not there alone. I remember coming across some sort of story or article or something about a church, and I guess it was maybe like by a hospital or something like that, but they developed this ministry that nobody dies alone. And so they would have this list of rotating volunteers who would just sit in the rooms of the dying so that nobody died alone. And I just thought, how profound that gift is. Whether it's holding a hand or praying over them or with them. Man, I have seen people who have not moved a voluntary muscle in days. And we start the Lord's Prayer during last rites, and you'll see their lips move. I don't know what they can perceive. I don't know what they hear or feel, but I've seen stuff. There's some kind of connection, even at what seems like the end. And so to have Hopeful there with him, does Christian make it without him? Seems kind of unlikely. What is the grace that we have in the encouragement, especially at the moments of greatest crisis, that God gives us through each other? We can say, we never walk alone because Christ is with us. But again, that's a theological truth. The pastoral truth of having somebody who can be there with you sometimes makes all the difference in the world. All right. So how do they get through? Does he die? Does he get swept away? Does he drown? And then he makes it. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Yeah, I couldn't help but have the hymn playing in the hymn in my
That
head.
happens a lot.
Getting to that never, no, never forsake. All right. So he has made it through to the other side, and we now have one last barrier to cross. We have a gate. They proceed to the gate. What kind of obstacle is the gate to them?
It's closed.
It is closed, but it's really no obstacle at all, because what happens?
No, they're asking for their tickets.
And they have them.
Yeah.
They can see everything in front of them, even the the tree of life with its never fading fruits. But as they approach that land where there is no sorrow, no sighing, no crying, no dying, the company of heavenly hosts come out to meet them. This is such a beautiful little moment. This is like when the shepherd loses the one sheep, he leaves the 99 and he finds it and he comes back home rejoicing with the lamb on its shoulders. And Jesus himself says, so heaven rejoices when just one sinner. This is, they all come out. Christian and hopeful may have been absolute nobodies in the world. As a matter of fact, all of the interactions we've had, they've either been unknown to other people or, oh, I know you, you're a jerk and I don't like you, or you think you're better than everybody else. Like the opinion's been negative. And now, as they are prepared to enter the celestial city, the company of heaven come to rejoice that it's Christian, it's hopeful. From the foundations of the earth, we have awaited their glorious arrival. Andy Warhol said everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes. You remember that way back when? To enter into the kingdom of heaven, there will be rejoicing because of you. You are not a nobody in the kingdom of heaven. And I thought that was just kind of a beautiful touch, that as they enter the gate, and yes, they're going to show their ticket and they're going to be welcomed in, but they're not just welcomed in like privately. It is a triumphant, celebratory moment. There is a book. And how does that go? So they have arrived, they are met at the gate, they show the tickets. The holy, holy, holy is the Lord, begins from the angels that will never cease. And we have this moment of true consummation. The union, which is no longer the bride at the threshold of the aisle, but the I do's have been said, the ring has been exchanged, the couple has been embraced, and they are now one flesh. And this would be a triumphant moment to end on, but he didn't end there. He's got a little coda at the end. So what's the actual end of the chapter?
So I awoke and saw that it was a dream.
Well, I mean, not the very, very end, but I mean, like, they're welcomed into the celestial city, and you would think, like, all done, but wait, there's one more little
Ignorance.
Here comes ignorance.
Here comes ignorance. Yeah.
Here comes ignorance. Passes through water, gets up to the gates.
No, he didn't pass through the water. He found a boat.
Oh, he found a boat. Sorry. So what happens to poor old ignorance?
Well,
He was ignorant all the way to the end. And vain hope, the ferryman. Sorry about that. Yes. And they help him cross the river. He makes it to the gate. What do you want? I have eaten and drunk in the presence of the king, and he is taught in our streets. So, okay.
They want his
Good.
certificate.
Show me your certificate. And what does he have to show them? Nothing. Therefore, this is like arriving to the wedding banquet without your wedding garment. He is to be cast out where there is wailing and gnashing of teeth. Carried through the air to the door I had seen at the side of the hill below the delectable mountains and put there. Then I realized there was a way to hell, even from the very gate of heaven. Go.
I don't like that ending.
It is a interesting artistic choice that after all this beauty and joy and all, and like, by the way,
There's hell.
yeah. So that is the actual end, is Bunyan awakes and it was just a dream. And we actually have a little poem at the end where he says, like, don't be too hard on me because this is not the real thing, but please take a lesson from it and learn so that this dream can become true in your life and into eternity. And it's kind of nice and it sort of rhymes. And he is trying to straddle that fence of teaching as clearly as possible, yet not committing what he would be afraid is a blasphemy by making too small of such great matters. But I guess, yeah, it seems like a little bit of an unusual. Like, I probably would not have ended this way. I would have maybe let them see ignorance first, and then they go through and they have a different experience. So you end in the joy. But you know what? He sold 100 million books and I haven't. So anyway, this is what has been referred to theologically. Aquinas was very in depth about this, beatific vision. To gaze upon the face of Jesus is to have our bodies and souls redeemed and transformed. To cross the river, to cross death, to be led into the gates. This is how we are able to enter into eternity, for the grace of God himself then transforms us, raises us. There's a death in the river. So how do they cross the other side other than a resurrection? And there, in the face of Jesus, they are made new in a way where that glory will never fade, but will only shine further and deeper and brighter than they can possibly imagine, again and again and forever and forever. For my take, I would end it there. For that is never the end, but it is just the true beginning.
The beginning.
But that is the end of our book. So anything else? Anything else to wrap this up? Any lingering questions?
I like that they were given new clothes.
Yes, they are.
As they crossed the river.
That's right. Everything is washed away, in essence. Very reminiscent, not just of the parts of Revelation where they're clad in white robes, but this was a practical element of baptism in the early church. You were baptized naked, and you were given a clean white baptismal garment after you came out of the water. We see that preserved, a vestige of it at least. You tend to see babies baptized in fancy gowns, right? Like it is not at all uncommon. I mean, it's less common than it used to be. It used to be kind of a given, but babies would be in like these white, little fancy satiny sort of things. Baptismal garments. The white alb that the clergy wear, or even those serving, is supposed to be reminiscent of that. You are clothed by Christ in what is fresh and clean, unspotted, unspoiled, because as he raises us up, we are given new clothes and made new. What else?
Well, my question is, why was it allowed that these two people were allowed to go all the way, but not quite to the top? Why weren't they kicked out way before they got so close to the end?
Which two people?
Ignorance.
Oh, why does ignorance get to go all the way to the end?
Yeah.
You know, ignorance would say the right thing, but just didn't understand and chose and refused to be taught otherwise. And so he was relying on his goodness, he was relying on his works righteousness, he was relying on, well, God loves everybody anyway, so what does it matter? You know, whatever it is. And so the thought is that he was going to take a bypass. He didn't have to believe, he didn't have to trust, he didn't have to accept. Grace wasn't necessary for him. Therefore, I think Bunyan felt it was important to underscore that at the end, we had to be utterly reliant on God's grace. Because remember, again, that parable from Jesus, that people got into the wedding banquet. They were there. They were inside, but then they were identified as not participating fully because they did not have they didn't have the wedding garment. So they're actually removed, chucked out. So I think he just wanted something to be able to bring that up in a very clear fashion, like being right at the cusp and still not making it. Well, why? Well, who's the sort of person who can make it? Well, somebody like ignorance, who's going to go all the way to the end thinking they've got it all squared away when they don't. Again, I in my mind, I'm going to rewrite this and I'm going to have them like watch ignorance, like before they cross the river, maybe, or after they cross the river, but before they get to the gate.
Yeah.
One of those. And then like maybe even a little trepidation, like, oh my gosh, what about us? Oh no, you've got your ticket, the grace of Christ, and come on. Whatever. Like I said, he's world famous throughout history, and I'm not. So I'm just gonna say whatever he did is fine. But I think there was a desire to have that consequence there on the cusp, there on the edge, there on the doorstep, so that not only the scriptural parable could be related, but also I think this is Bunyan's evangelicalism that's saying, you know, no matter how good or well your life goes to the end, at the end, it must be through Christ's holy gift to you. That's the ticket. That's the ticket you got to have. Is it the clearest metaphor I've ever heard? No. You know, can I poke at it a little bit? Yes. But I think we get the gist of what he is trying to do. And I think we can see that there is what he is intending out of this is admonishment and encouragement. That's always been the case. Don't think too well of yourself. Continue to trust in the grace of Christ. And then rinse and repeat. Keep doing that again and again and again. Because as soon as you get to one step, you need to go back and repeat the first step. And you get the first step, you need to make sure you get the second step. And you just gotta have to keep doing it again and again and again. There's always a need until we enter that country where there is no longer a need. Because there are no needs, because they've all been fulfilled within the very presence of God. Okay, anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for taking this pilgrimage with me. And I'm glad and I'm grateful that here on the cusp of Christmas, that we can think about and imagine at least a glimpse of God's eternal glory, and that's the end of our pilgrimage that we are still walking through now.